Before we get started with the show, I just wanted to remind you that if you need help with your letter of intent, go to residencyhelp.com to look at the information there, and then let me know that you'd want to work with me one-on-one at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. That's tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. All right, let's get started with the show. Welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm Tony Guerra, and I just heard from one of the guys at the Pharmacy Informatics Academy, and they were setting up an APPE list to help people out. They did that in spring 2020 for those that needed remote help, and I believe they're going to make a list for this year. But what I wanted to talk about was I'm getting notices or questions from students that have graduated, are looking for experience, but now that they're out of school, it's kind of like, well, good luck. You can't do APPEs after school. And the question is, well, can you? And no, they're not going to be APPEs for credit, but what you're really trying to do is make sure that you have those 5 filled in: the clinical, research, teaching, leadership, and service. And leadership and service are relatively easy to do outside of school. Clinical is extremely hard to do outside of school. Research, you can probably do that. But teaching, that would be a tough one. But that's one that I can help you with if you're interested in doing remote work. And it would have to be a commitment of at least a week, I think. But I've done APPEs from 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and 6 weeks. So there are a variety of them, and you may think, well, you're from such and such school, so you were just used to the 4 week, the 5 week, or the 6 week. But we can do something together of a week or more. Just contact me at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com if you're either somebody who maybe through no fault of your own, you're just not going to get teaching experience in your APPE as a P4. You're a P3 who'd be interested in doing it even before the P4 year, because you'll have more time as a P3, or you're a postgrad and you've graduated and you need that teaching component to fill in the rubric if you're applying for residency again this year. So tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. Let me know what you're thinking about, and maybe we can set something up. But what I want to talk about is those that are drawing dead. And so in poker, when you're drawing dead, and if you've ever watched one of those shows late at night, they've got the World Series of Poker, and somebody's already lost and they don't realize they've lost, and they have a hand that's not as good as the other person's. Well, people that are drawing dead or really don't have much of a chance of getting residency, you already can see that now. So if you go into ASHP match stats, what you want to do is, and this is kind of a lot of work, but what I did was I copied and pasted it into a Word document. It was easier that way, and then put it in Excel. And then in Excel, I created the list, and I can tell you how many people were interested in residency, and those would be that registered for the match, and then those that got it. So this is not enrolled and got it, because that's the number that the schools use. So when they say we had an 67% match rate, which is the average, I think, it was those that got an interview and matched, not those that were interested in the beginning. And I'm not sure why they use that instead, but it is what it is. But if you look at the list, there are 4 schools that are 10% or lower. Then you've got another 6 or 7 schools that are under 20% in addition to that. And then another maybe 10 schools that are between 20 and 30%. And then there's a bunch of schools kind of in the 30s, probably about 20, I want to say, where you really only had, maybe even 30, that you really only had about a 1 in 3 chance of getting a residency from the very beginning. And then it kind of goes up from there. So in many cases, your chances of getting a residency based on the school that you're in are very low. And the problem is, and there's a quote from Mark Twain, it's not what you know that comes true that matters, but it's what you know for sure that just ain't so. That's the problem. And what many people have is in their head, they're like, well, the average is 2 out of 3, 67%, I'm good. But you can look at your college and say, whoa, wow, our college didn't even match at a 10% rate. The pharmacy, residency directors are looking at this list too, and they're unlikely to take a chance like, well, they look good on paper. I'm sure I'm just going to take someone that's coming from a school that only matches at 10 or 20%. And I don't think that's the case. So what we want to do is say, okay, well, what are the things that we can do to kind of overcome this after graduation? Because the first thing that they're going to ask you if you didn't match is, why didn't you match? And you can say, well, I had a gap in teaching, and I had a gap in research, and I had a gap in service. So I filled the gap in service by doing this. I filled the gap in research by doing this. And I filled the gap in teaching by hanging out with Tony and doing these projects for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. And that's a very reasonable answer. And now you're back in the pool just like everyone else, and you're good to go. But that is the first question that you have to answer. And the same thing is going to be true for those that are, looking for a job. Okay, well, why didn't you get a job, or why do you feel you're not employed? Okay, what have you done between the time of graduation to do that? Now, ideally, a school would say, you're one of our graduates, you're an alumnus, you didn't get to where you wanted to be. We're going to continue to offer a couple of APPEs to you, but I think that can't be the case because, one, there's all the liability that comes with it, but two, the bigger issue is they really are struggling to get APPEs in the first place with coronavirus and so forth. So first step to go to ASHP Match Stats and see where your school ended up. Definitely if you're one of those schools that you're really, really concerned, I would say, and the 30%, kind of that 40% cutoff is at 112 to 150. So we're looking at about 40 schools. So about 25-30% of the colleges of pharmacy in the country are matching at less than 40%. And I would say if you're in that group for sure, you want to make sure that all your boxes are checked, whether you graduated from that school or you're in that school now. And just, send me an email, tonythepharmacist@gmail.com, and we'll see if we can work something out, and I can help you out. And maybe you can fill the teaching box, the academic box, and get one of your 5 done. Hey, thanks again for listening to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast. I do encourage you to go to residencyhelp.com, get on the mailing list. I'll send you out an email every Friday during residency season, but then afterwards, I'll still have a number of episodes on helping you get through residency itself. And then if you're somebody that's looking at residency in the future, I'll also have content for that as well. If you have a question, I'm pretty good about getting back to you. And if I don't have an answer, I will know someone that does. So thanks again for listening to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please do rate and review. It really matters in terms of our ability to reach more people. Thanks again.